Dialectical behavior therapy was created in the 1980s by Marsha Linehan in Seattle, Washington.
Today, DBT is taught all over the world.
We're two therapists who believe everyone can benefit from DBT skills.
I'm Kate.
I'm Michelle.
And this is DBT and Me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Q&A 38.
Yes, hello.
Which is, oh, here we go, Michelle's favorite dialectic, bittersweet.
Right?
Because this is the last Q&A. I mean, gosh, when will this be posted? I don't even know when I'm talking to people.
So, we are currently recording this on October 15th.
Yeah,
I'm 39 weeks pregnant today. And as we've mentioned in the past few Q&As, we've just kind of been really pushing through and recording a bunch because we've wanted to get caught up before baby arrives. But yeah, our listeners aren't going to be listening to this until like February.
Oh, really?
Yep. So for Kay and I, This is a very momentous Q&A, but we're hopeful that with how things are going to be posted, you guys really won't have that big of a gap in Q&A.
Between that and when our first quote-unquote real episode comes out again?
Yes. But this marks us, after this, we're not going to be recording together for a while.
For months. It'll be so weird.
Yeah.
I'm used to doing this with you so consistently.
I know, it will be weird.
It will be weird.
Yeah.
I have to actually drive to see you or some silly shit like that.
I know, I would love that. I have your cake.
Well, you better believe I will be coming to visit you once that baby comes out.
Yes. I will be like,
to it. How long does he have to be home before I'm allowed to come visit? That will be me. So you just can wait for that.
Yep.
Anyway, so last for us, but probably not a noticeably last for you guys.
Yes. Hopefully,
by the time you get here.
Exactly. Hopefully you'll be listening to this one, and then a couple weeks after this, we'll have another one ready to post for you. Hopefully. That's how it'll go. We'll see.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's just so funny. I'm so used to it being close to the release date when we record, so I forgot that for a minute.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a really long intro. Here we go. Michelle gets to go first this time.
I do get to go first. Yeah, and we have kind of a longer one starting us off today. But yeah, gonna dive in. So it says, hey, everyone. First of all, I hope you're having a good day and enjoying this fall weather. See? We're recording this in the fall. I've got a dilemma or situation going on with my employer right now that I need some help with, whether it be advice or pointing me in the direction of what episodes of the podcast could help with this situation. I'm a dental hygienist, and I just took a new job 2 months ago. I quit my old job for this new job with the promise of a higher salary after receiving my x-ray license. And then they mentioned that they moved to a new state, so they had to retake the exams to get licensed in the new state they now live in. I received my license and expected to be paid my new salary wage. 3 days ago, my boss pulls me in and states that my x-rays are not up to her standards and that she will now not be paying me my new wage until if or when my performance improves. She's being very vague, and I think it's because she's going to try and continue to find other reasons to hold my pay back. I thought this was a joke at first. First of all, yes, I had been out of work 6 months, so I did work on improving my x-rays, and they were actually looking great that whole week, so I was feeling super proud of myself. So when she said that, I felt so betrayed and hurt by the fact that she would, number one, not honor our contract, and number two, she doesn't think they're good enough. But really, I just think she doesn't want to pay me. I do not think she has a valid reason to not pay me what we agreed on, and I don't know how to fight this properly. I told her my x-rays have already improved, and I'm one of the most hardworking and passionate hygienists. And not to toot my own horn, but I'm very good at what I do, and I love seeing patients. I left a really good office and gave them a little less than what I would have wanted as a notice of my leave to help her because her hygienist was going on maternity leave. Her office is unorganized, and according to the other hygienist, a shit show. They just have a lot of things to work on as far as flow and organization and such, and I'm really good with that. So I knew I could really help them, and I knew what I was getting into, obviously, with the goal to help them improve. I love the team I'm working with as well, so I want this to work. But I feel like if she doesn't abide by our contract, I need to say goodbye and find a new job. I'm feeling so upset and betrayed, and honestly pissed off that I have to feel this way. Now I'm worrying she's just planning to fire me once the other hygienist comes back, or who even knows. Maybe that's me being dramatic, but that's how I'm feeling. Any advice or guidance will help. I'm talking to her Monday about the situation again.
Woof. That's a doozy. I didn't actually put this in my notes, but I did want to start by just saying, yeah, you're pissed.
Yeah.
Like, I would be pretty dang pissed too if my employer wasn't honoring a contract that they had with me, especially in regards to pay. You know, we all need, money for our life expenses and such. Mm-hmm. And if you were planning on being able to rely on something, that's a pretty big deal when it doesn't happen. So, just a giant dose of validation about your anger and sense of betrayal, because I think it makes a lot of sense. Michelle is going to cover the most appropriate skill, I think, for addressing this kind of situation. So I'm going to mention some stuff sort of, before, during, after the thing that she's going to talk about. So first and foremost, and like many things, maybe just because we've been recording so many of these, I feel like I've said this a lot, but cope ahead, right? I think if you're planning on some sort of difficult conversation, cope ahead can be a really great skill to employ leading up to the actual conversation itself, right? This is your chance to rehearse, various ways that the conversation could go and how you want to behave, no matter how your boss behaves, right? So don't try and imagine the best case scenario, because probably in the best case scenario, you don't need to do much coping ahead. But give yourself some space, between bad and worse, and imagine yourself responding skillfully and in line with your own values in response to it not going great. So that's one thing I think about. For more immediately before the conversation, I also think about the superhero stance. This can do a lot to bolster our sense of confidence going into an otherwise anxiety-ridden situation. For those of you who don't know, right, that's standing, feet apart, hands on your hips, chest up and out, right? This, the superhero pose. Like, ta-da! I'm on the cover of a comic. Because, we've gone into this in very, 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 very past episodes, but, right, our bodies talk to our brains. If we're standing like we're confident, our brain is going to get on board. And then I would plan for some sort of self-care for after the conversation, kind of no matter how it goes. Because even if it does go the best possible way, you've spent a lot of time agonizing over this. There's been a lot of emotional buildup. You're probably going to have a bit of a crash, even if it goes well. So, and it may not go well. So I would definitely have some sort of plan in place before going into the conversation for how you're going to take care of yourself afterwards. Rather than being like, well, I'll just see how I feel afterwards and then decide what I do or don't want to do for myself. Depending on how poorly it goes, depending on how upset you are, you may not be in the best brain space to try and plan some self-care at that point. So, I don't know what that looks like, whether it's maybe taking yourself out for lunch if you're still in the middle of a work day, or if it means going home and snuggling up with a blanket and watching a comfort show, or, some way of being kind to yourself that you already have everything set up for and is easily accessible. So yeah, you don't have to think about it in the moment. Mm-hmm. There you go. Those are my things. Now you go and tackle the main thing.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah. And if my memory serves me well, sometimes I get different posts in the group mixed up and I don't always go back and look before we start recording, which would be maybe a good idea. But I'm pretty sure, unfortunately, this didn't have a good ending for this listener. I think they did post that they had this conversation and their boss was standing by, like, this is what I'm now paying you, right? This lower wage. And I think the listener did wind up ultimately considering getting another job, if not actually giving notice at this job. So that's a bummer. It's a bummer that it went that way.
Ooh.
Yeah. But in terms of skills, I mean, this has Dear Man written all over it. All over it. The other skill I thought of just now while I was reading through it that I didn't put down in my notes is this is also a great situation to practice the dime game. For like
story.
how strongly to stick to your guns here about this raise. Kind of an idea. So whenever we're doing Dear Man conversations with people in positions of authority, I think the dime game can be really helpful.
True.
I mean, it can be helpful regardless, but right, like the situation if you're talking with a roommate about the dishes versus talking about a boss about a raise, different. Yeah. And it really is important to determine how strong to make the ask and how to approach the Dear Man. So, yeah. And I was, even though Dear Man's definitely the skill to use here, I kind of realized when I was like, oh, yeah, use Dear Man. Reinforcement negotiation could be a bit difficult here. And the reason why is because, I don't know. I kind of got the sense from this listener, which I don't blame them a bit. So let me be clear. Don't blame them a bit. And this is why, again, the dime game can be really important. Sometimes we're like not willing to negotiate. Like the end part of Dear Man, we're like, nope. I need this raise. Like, I need to get paid what you originally told me I was going to get paid or I'm out. Like, there isn't an opportunity to negotiate.
Yeah.
So that can make it a little tricky. Reinforcement can sometimes also get a little tricky. I mean, this listener did name in their post a lot of really great qualities that they're bringing into this new work environment. And it really does sound like they're helping out their boss because another hygienist is on leave and that kind of a thing. So like there are things to reinforce here for the boss. But sometimes that can get tricky, especially when we're asking for raises or time off or things like that. What is in it for the other person? Kind of a thing. So just some stumbling blocks to think about if others find themselves in similar situations as this listener, where, this does happen. You talk about something with, say, a supervisor of some kind, and then the script changes, and you're like, hold on a second. I am not okay with this. So just to really be aware of, like, checking in if there is anything you're willing to negotiate on, and what can you reinforce for the other person. Those can, I think, be the toughest two elements that may come up in situations like this. The other thing too that I heard throughout this post, which I don't want this to come across as critical, because if I were in this listener's shoes, yeah, I would be pissed. Like, I would be absolutely pissed that I was told I was going to get paid a certain wage, and now I'm being told I'm not actually going to get that wage because my x-rays are quote unquote not good enough, even though I know my x-rays rock. Like, I'd be pissed too. So I want to be clear that I can very much understand where this listener is coming from. And also, we could very easily fall into stories that we tell ourselves in our heads, right? About what we think the other person's intention is and why we think they are doing what they're doing. And we don't always know. I mean, again, it is really unfortunate that this listener, again, if my memory serves me well, did try to talk about this with their boss and didn't get a great reaction. That sucks. But there's a lot we don't know here about why the boss is making this decision. The listener says that another hygienist describes this workplace as a shit show. Yeah, there's some things going on we don't know. And whenever we catch ourselves, saying, well, I'm pissed off that I have to feel this way, we don't have to feel any kind of way. We are fully in charge of how we respond, no matter how terrible, like, the prompting event is. And in this case, the prompting event is pretty terrible. But the boss is not making you feel this way, if that makes sense. So I don't know. I just think it's really important for us to be careful about verbiage and to really be careful when we're saying, well, I think they're doing it because of this, when we don't actually know. Because a lot of times that just mires us deeper, if that makes sense. Like, if we were already feeling pissed off, well, that's a good recipe to make us feel even more pissed off. And to kind of view it as like the other person persecuting us. And even if they are not treating us well, it's not necessarily going to do our mental health any good to be viewing them in like such a negative light. So we could certainly take a much more, I guess you could say, like mindful or non-judgmental approach of, I don't really know why my boss is making this decision. I don't know what changed. This is why I need to talk to her, because I don't really know what's changed, right? Rather than being like, she just doesn't want to pay me, like that greedy bitch. They didn't say that. That's just me inserting that there. But it doesn't always help us to like go down rabbit holes with the stories our brains tell us. So something else to think about there too, though it's so common and it happens to me also. We're not perfect. But to be mindful of. So.
I like it.
Okay,
All
your
right,
turn, Kate.
Next one. This one says, are DBT therapists supposed to ignore you if you have legitimate questions about the program and your homework? I feel abandoned on a daily basis, and I was told I would have a committed, yet human, therapist. I'm not a prima donna. I can wait for answers, but to be ignored makes my work ineffective. I feel irrationally angry about this and need some wisdom because I have many blind spots. What can I do? If this is not normal, I want to look into alternative programs where the fit is better.
Yeah. My short answer is, no, you're not supposed to feel ignored. That's not a great way to feel. And it's not the goal of DBT. If anything, if you're in a program that's like truly practicing, how do they put it, right? The gold standard of DBT or like full fidelity DBT, or there are these different terms that are used. You're supposed to have someone available to you 24/7 for phone coaching as a component of those programs. Not every DBT program offers that, but some do, purely so that you are getting help when you have questions or in a crisis and that kind of a thing. So, no, feeling ignored is not the outcome that you want. A little bit of a longer answer, right? In any DBT program or any DBT therapist that you're working with, there should be some clear guidelines and expectations, ideally, about what it looks like to seek support in between sessions. So whether those sessions are group sessions or individual sessions or whatever type of DBT treatment you're receiving, this is something that you and the therapist would be talking about right from the get-go, in terms of, this is the best way to contact me, this is when I'm available, this is how long it might take me to get back to you, right? General rule of thumb is, if you call me or text me, I'll get back to you within 24 hours. Like whatever it is. And different therapists have different boundaries and guidelines and availability. But if you're not sure what it looks like, that is a problem. That is a concern. The other thing, which, I mean, is not Kate and I, but again, kind of like, I would classify it as maybe like old school DBT. DBT, I think when it was created, was kind of designed to be a little more like tough love. That makes sense? Like a little more critical. There's a lot of DBT programs that still do it this way. Kate and I do not. We try to get through homework check-in as quickly as possible. And we try to focus on what our clients are doing well when it comes to practicing their homework. But there are a lot of DBT programs where you spend an hour of group doing homework check-in. And the therapist tries to take certain examples that people are sharing and have it be that they are role played, or that the therapist really looks at did this client act as skillfully as possible? Let me give suggestions for how you could have been more skillful or more effective. It's really kind of meant to be this time of, we're going to look at what you're sharing for what happened in your week, and we're going to pick it apart and tell you what you could have done better. That is an approach that some DBT therapists take. Not all, but many, I would say. And it might be that approach isn't working for you, or you may be finding that, again, especially if you're in a group format, you just feel like they don't have time to get to your questions. Which, I'll be honest, sometimes Kate and I, on really busy DBT nights, we don't always have time, but we tell people then to, text us or email us or call us after group so that we can get to their question. So I definitely don't like that you're having this experience of, feeling unsupported. That's not great. And
no.
Again, I don't know if part of it is just because, that's the approach that's being taken in your program of like, let's really pick things apart. Or if it's truly just like the therapist is not making time, or doesn't have the time, which isn't ideal either. So, I don't know. Those were my thoughts. It made me sad to read this post. I didn't like it.
Yeah, like a icky flavor.
Mm-hmm.
So most of what Michelle said, I wanted to add in just, I don't know, one of the things that stood out to me here was the line that said, I feel irrationally angry about this. I don't, at least at first blush, feel that your anger is necessarily irrational. Maybe you're saying the degree that anger is irrational, and I don't know how angry this person is, but I wanted to start with just a tiny dose of validation of, if that's really what's going on, I think being angry makes sense and is appropriate. No one likes to be ignored, especially by the people who are supposed to be rendering care to them. So, no, I don't know that the anger is irrational. That was one thing. I did think that depending on how, far into the program this person is, or how much effort they want to put into trying to stay into it for various and sundry reasons, that they might, amusingly, trying DBT skills on your DBT therapist, but, right, you basically might do a dear man to try and ask them to behave differently. Right? Like, when I asked this question last week, you never got around to answering it. That left me feeling abandoned and ignored. It's really, I'd like to, ask that you address my questions one way or another whenever I ask them. That would leave me considerably more likely to stay in this, group rather than look for another one. Made up off the top of my head. There you go. Right. And, that at least lets them in on how you're feeling and why. And you can see if they keep behaving that way or not. But, maybe they don't understand what they're doing or how it's being received. So if you want to give them a chance, Dear Man might be a good way to do that. But, you're right. It may just not be a good fit. Different programs are different. For better or worse, depending on who you are. I know that Michelle and I teach pretty differently than a lot of people, and so we definitely wouldn't be the right fit for some folks. Mm-hmm. And some folks who are in ridiculously, I was going to say uptight, and then I thought I should say something nicer. Now I can't think of anything nicer. Strict. There we go. DBT groups might like some, teachers who are a little bit more go with the flow. Flow? Oh, Jesus Christ. Go with the flow like Michelle and I. So, yeah, don't put yourself through it for too long if there aren't any changes or you can't, come to some resolution with the teacher, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. I love your suggestion, though, of try to talk it out, see what happens. But, yeah, nothing changes, then maybe move on if you can. Okay. This next one says, do you think people with BPD are too often expected to say sorry? I'm having a hard time with a friend right now because they say they don't feel supported because I didn't reply to their text message the right way. In retrospect, I should have put up a boundary because I wasn't in the right frame of mind to have a conversation. But they messaged me back saying they gave me a second chance to not glaze over it. And that makes me feel like they're testing our friendship or looking for me to slip up. I've tried to draft a response after taking time out to calm down, check the facts, and use Dear Man. Sometimes, as someone with BPD, the advice I get to resolve conflict is very often just apologize.
Yeah, so, I don't know. I think, Michelle and I probably, again, have similar-ish things to say, but a little bit of a different flavor. I suspect that, at least in part, there is mental health bias at work, right? Like, if you have a mental health diagnosis, then obviously you're the one who needs to apologize because you're the crazy one, right? Like, you are probably the cause of the discord here because you are the crazy person with mental health problems. So me, as a normal person who's healthy and rational, clearly can't actually be the one at fault. So I don't know if this is showing up in this person's life or not, but I can certainly imagine it. That suddenly all points that you have aren't valid just because you're quote unquote crazy. So that was, I don't know, a flavor of possibility that I identified in what this person was talking about. That said, it's a good idea just to look at it, right? Doing our best doesn't always work, right? So first of all, do acknowledge that maybe you were doing a good job, maybe you were doing your best and it still just didn't land right. But I don't know, when I was thinking about this, I'm told just apologize, I thought about wise mind. Like, assess for yourself. Actually, now that I'm speaking out loud, check the facts could also maybe work here.
Yeah, which they mentioned.
Person already talks about. I was just going to say, talks about using.
They mentioned
which is awesome.
skills.
I know, very much so. Which is funny. In my own notes, I skipped over that part where it says, "Great job finding good skills to use." Because I was super impressed, right? Like taking time out to calm down, check the facts. I was like, oh, those are a lot of what I would recommend.
Yep.
To someone in this position. But whether it's this particular incident or just other future incidents, I think it's a good idea when someone suggests we apologize to at least consider if they're right and do an internal check, right? Whether that be through check the facts or through wise mind or just mindfulness in general, and be like, well, that's their opinion. Do I concur? Right? If I really try and look at this from a balanced perspective, do I owe this person an apology? Because sometimes probably the answer will be yes, just speaking from personal experience. And sometimes the answer is no. And so I hope that this person and anyone else listening is able to feel empowered to kind of be their own judge of that. There's a lot of ways we can talk about something. If someone's, there's a lot of different reasons to owe someone an apology. So I do think that quite often, even, I know we talk about intent versus impact and other things, right? We don't have to have done something quote unquote wrong to owe someone an apology. We can sometimes owe someone an apology when we didn't do anything wrong. And also sometimes it's just not true that we owe someone an apology, right? And so I highly, highly recommend taking a pause. There you go, maybe part of stop. And assessing, do I need to apologize with this person? And letting that ultimately be the deciding factor. But those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I really agree with a lot of what you said. So I don't think I'll probably have too much more to add on. Because, like Kate was talking about, there can be biases that come up when somebody has a mental health diagnosis. People can just assume that person is the problem. Especially with BPD, a stereotypical way that it looks, though it certainly is gonna be different for everyone, but people can think of someone with a BPD diagnosis as flying off the handlebars. And And then thinking that, like, so obviously they need to be responsible for picking up the pieces. Kind of an idea. I mean, stereotypes definitely do exist, unfortunately. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I really like everything that Kate was saying of, like, you know, there is kind of this dialectic of, like, we are trying our best and we can do better. And that when it comes to apologizing, sometimes the rationale for why we do it is because we're just acknowledging what we can do better. That's really it. And to, yeah, really examine what feedback the other person was giving and to try to look at it and be like, oh, yes, maybe that was an area I could have improved on, right? I don't need to, you know, gigantically beat myself up and think that I'm a terrible person or anything like that. But like, oh, yeah, okay. Maybe that's true that I could have responded in that way. And then maybe it would have gone better, right? Yeah, I think also kind of a distinction here too. You talk about, you know, this is coming up with a friend. What's the priority here? Is the priority to repair the relationship, get things back on track? Or is the priority your self-respect and trying to stand up for yourself and say, well, this is why I did what I did. And this is why I feel good about it, right? Because that's going to vastly impact how you approach the situation. But I'd like to think most of the time our priorities are that we want to repair friendships and relationships and maintain them. And when that's what we want, yeah, it is important to validate the other person's point of view. Doesn't mean we have to invalidate our own, but to validate theirs. There are things that are validating probably about their perspective and your perspective. And just, yeah, really making sure you're not over apologizing and just apologizing for, yeah, where you can do better next time. Because we can all do better. Yeah.
Okay. Last one.
Last one. Yeah.
All right. So this one's a short one. It just says, question, is there an effective reframe, maybe using non-judgmental stance, for the thought that I've ruined something? In quotes. Like, maybe I wasn't able to access the skills I needed to effectively reach my goals this time, and I know I can find compassion for myself. I don't know. Thoughts?
Perfect. Good job, listener. Kate and I kind of both read this one and we're like, they did it all on their own, right? They don't need us to answer this. I love that reframe. It's a great reframe.
It's even got a dialectic in it.
Yes, I know, right? They capitalize the and, just like how we do with dialectics. This is true, and this other thing. But here's what I will touch on briefly, is that there is a distinction, in my opinion, between, like, mistakes and, like, failures. I believe we rarely fail at things. I mean, we might have, like, a handful of, like, big fuck-ups in our lifetime where it's like, whoa, that was real bad. Like, I can't come back from that. Like, this is really awful. But mistakes happen every day. Mistakes are part of the human experience. Mistakes are part of life. And sometimes we can get it confused and we can think that our mistakes are failures. And so this is where check the facts can be a helpful skill to add in, especially that question that check the facts asks about, like, you know, what is the worst case scenario here? And then if it happens, how do I imagine myself coping? Which I always love that follow-up to that question. But is it really as bad as you think it is? Like, when you think that you've ruined something, have you actually, like, ruined it? Or did you just make a mistake? And, you know, can you try again tomorrow? And yeah, can you find compassion for yourself, exactly like you said, and practice a little bit of forgiveness? So I'm worried I took everything Kate is about to say, because we wanted to say very similar things, I think. But that's the distinction I look at. mistakes and like failures are different things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not to say anything about you or the listener, but there's not a huge amount to say because they did a beautiful job, as you know, as you said, right? Like, is there a reframe of this? Like, yes, there is. You did it. Mm-hmm. Congratulations. Well done. Thanks for the example.
Yep.
So I think they did a lovely job. So I mean, the thing I want to say does intersect well with what you were talking about, Michelle. But it's just, I don't know, maybe slightly my own spin on it, which is not DBT related at all, but something that I often tell my clients and also family, friends, myself, is you will fuck up. You will. As long as you are human and still breathing.
Yeah.
You're gonna fuck up. It's an absolute inescapable destiny. And if I think about it, you know, I use fuck up as a pretty broad term that would, I think, technically encompass Michelle's mistakes and failures.
Yeah. Yep.
But on the small side of things, more on the mistake side of what Michelle was talking about, I don't know about you, but I suspect that if you're human like me, you fuck up every day. Maybe not anything big. Maybe not even anything, like, noteworthy in, like, even a substantial way. But yeah, you fucked up something. Because you're human. And so, while on the one hand, I understand that for most people's brains, telling themselves, you will fuck up, may not sound immediately positive. I actually find it enormously reassuring. Right? Like, this is, it's just a little mantra for myself, right? You will fuck up. Because for me, that's just I don't know, code word of sorts, code phrase, to remind me that I'm human. So yeah, I fucked up. Because I'm human. And that's what we do. Yep. As we move through the world, right? It's not an exceptional thing. It's not, and most fuck-ups / mistakes aren't really worthy of much thought or commentary, because they're just part of the daily, you know, day-to-day usual fucking up us humans do. And rarely is something fucked up to the point of being actually and legitimately ruined, because ruined is a big word. I mean, it's a small word in the most literal sense, but woo!
I think of ruined as like, there's no going back.
Yeah, like destroyed, right? Ruined is destruction, right? And that's, I mean, it's not that I never destroy things. I think most of my destruction comes in the forms of knocking art off of things, in which case I tend to destroy the frame and glass. That's ruined. But on the plus side, most of the time the art is fine, right? So it's not completely ruined, right? It's just a setback. So, yeah, everything that Michelle said, plus maybe if you're someone whose brain works a little bit more like mine, in which case something that sounds a little flippant and sarcastic can actually feel really reassuring, I would offer up, you will fuck up. Because you're human, and that's what you do. Yeah. So, that's all I have. I know it's a relatively short one to end on, but there we are.
Yeah. Okay. So, send us emails at dbtmepodcast@gmail.com. Post in the Facebook group. Again, as we talked about at the beginning of this episode, yep, we're recording this one mid-October. The next time we're actually recording a Q&A for you guys, I will have been a mom for a few months, which is so crazy. So we have a feeling that by the next time we record, we're going to have a lot of content from you guys, which we just so appreciate. To start tackling other Q&As in the future. So yeah, either by emailing us or by posting in the Facebook group, let us know what questions you guys have, and we will get to it, I guess, in Q&A 39.
I guess so. Back. Though also I think it's funny, since, I mean, I guess I don't know who or what or where will be watching the tiny human, but I can totally imagine it will not only be my cat interrupting things.
Yeah. Yep. It's very
by the time
possible,
we get back to recording.
Yeah, that the tiny human might be around, and we may have to do a lot of editing to make sure he does not override what we're trying to talk about. So we'll see how it all plays out.
All right. Well, bye for now.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
To learn more about us and the DBT skills we're teaching each week, join our Facebook group. Simply log in to your Facebook profile and search for DBT and Me